All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Around the Draft. Joining me, kind of a legend for this actually, because he was one of the first people that did this with us last year. I'm just gonna throw that out there, wearing the hat of his team for him, of course, as well, at least for now. Joining me is Felix, though. Felix, how you doing?
I am great. I'm really happy to be here and appreciate the invite. Thank you, Shayne.
Yeah, I was the first person I thought of when I was like, well, we're doing the NFC East. Got to get the Giants fan on here.
Oh,
He has to, especially because I have to apologize for all my Daniel Jones slander that was totally justified, but I had to do it on every episode of the show you were on last year. So, hey, and guess who? Guess who's not playing for the Giants anymore? You don't have to worry about me making a Daniel Jones
oh yeah.
reference on every pick this time.
I will say I was with you the entire way.
Oh, I know,
I
but it's just still. I'm like every
Yeah.
time I had to find a way to. If you
The
listened
moment
last year,
the
if
moment he was released, I was just like, oh, there is a God. So
yeah,
I
so
was
yeah,
really
yeah,
happy.
yeah, Giants fan. If you couldn't tell already from what we've already said, but yeah, if you watched the show at all last year, I kind of made sure I managed to bring up Daniel Jones in every episode somehow because Felix wasn't on it, so I had to. But no, he cannot hurt you anymore. Luckily, Felix, unless he were to become a good player somewhere else, which would be really weird and dumb. But who knows? I suppose.
Yeah.
But, but no, uh, Jake will be joining us shortly. Dalton's out this week, so not only do we want to have Felix on for the NFCs because of his fandom, but because we need an extra body here, of course, as well. So it should be a lot of fun. I will get to that in a little bit. I want to give Jake some time to get here, but in the meantime, definitely some interesting stuff to talk about with this division. Right, you kind of have
Yeah.
polar opposites in terms of where two of these teams finished and where two of these teams well, barely finished. Let's just put it that way. Especially when it
Yeah.
comes to the Giants. Kind of lived to the finish line. Of course, you did get one Drew Lock game that did prevent you guys from having the first pick in this draft, which,
Yeah.
it could be worse, but it is unfortunate a little bit. Kind of the Patriots had the same thing happen to them. They got Joe Milton, of course, because who would have guessed that before the season? But in general, Titans end up being the team that have the first pick, but still third pick. Good position to be in this draft, I think. And I'm very curious, ultimately, kind of one based on how the first two picks go when we get to our mock draft, but also kind of your thoughts on it,
Yeah.
how you feel about that third pick, because a lot of directions you could go, depending on what quarterbacks do or don't go in front of you, could matter a lot.
Yeah.
Whether you even care if they're there or not is also a fair question because this draft class is certainly a little weird when it comes to quarterbacks. We've talked about that on the show, and many other shows have talked about it as well. So I'm very curious, kind of where your head's at once we get to that point. But
Yeah, it's a really interesting draft, and I mean every draft is interesting to me,
mm-hmm.
but it's a great point. I mean, it's sort of been a resounding feeling and talk that this is a weak quarterback class.
Yeah,
So if you need one, you're going to be begging for one after those first five or so picks. And I think what really makes it interesting, like you led into, what is it that number one and number two are going to do? What are the Titans and the Browns going to do? Because Titans need a quarterback, new general manager, so new philosophy, new way of operating. And then you have the Browns who are still stuck in the Deshaun Watson situation that they dug themselves into.
yeah,
And now it's, the question of, is he even going to be able to play because he has the Achilles injury and that's going to eat into the year? Do they just go after a young guy? Um, I don't know. That's the one to me that's very interesting because I could see the Titans going quarterback. It makes sense; they need one, but Cleveland might opt to not waste those cheap rookie deal, quarterback years, while they're also paying this one guy who's just sitting around. Do they eat all of that dead cap and just get rid of him? Like, what are they going to do? And maybe they just go best player available and pick someone, and that allows a quarterback to get to the Giants at number three. Um, but for the sake of argument, if quarterbacks go 1 and 2, Giants would obviously be drastically reaching for a guy at number three, which Giants fans would realize, hey, that's not unfamiliar. They did it with Daniel Jones. Hi, Jake.
What a
And
topic to enter the conversation on, huh?
yeah, right.
right,
How do the first two picks go, and what does it mean for the Giants? Of course, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, if quarterbacks go 1 and 2, I think the Giants are in prime position to go after the best player that they feel deserves that slot, or they could honestly sell that pick. I feel like there are going to be teams that might want to move up a few slots to go and grab one of those guys who are top of the class. First thought is Travis Hunter, dual threat. Weird to say dual threat, but both sides of the ball, offense, defense, talented on both sides, and that might be an enticing player to go after and move up before, or the Giants go and get him. In terms of number 3, in terms of the Giants, I think Travis Hunter makes sense. I'm a big fan of them going for Abdul Carter there. I think having a versatile weapon on defense is going to make sense, and then having I forgot if it was Jerry Reese or Steve Spagnuolo. I think it was Jerry Reese, but the old general manager, I think he said you can never have too many pass rushers. So
I tend to agree.
hey,
As a team that doesn't ever have more than 3 at a time, I agree that you can never have more than.
yeah. So I mean, getting Abdul Carter, adding him to the rotation with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, that makes total sense to me, especially if injury bug hits, guys go down. But then he's played off ball, so you can move him around and make him really versatile and keep offenses guessing. I really wouldn't even be opposed to like them going Mason Graham just because he's that disruptive and that dynamic of a defensive tackle, and pairing him with Dexter Lawrence would be
That's a good point. Yeah.
insane. And they struggled to stop the run a bit this year, so that might be a nice little addition. But there's a variety of areas they could go. They have so many needs. I really wouldn't be surprised by any move or any selection.
That's kind of the thing with the Giants, and like I want to let Jake have a chance to talk about it a little bit too before we jump into it. But they have so many holes that you could argue are their biggest hole outside of quarterback, because they have none, right? Like Drew Lock, one game of Drew Lock withstanding, where Malik Neighbors was like the best player on the planet for like 2 quarters. It really was not much going on at the quarterback position for the Giants. And that doesn't mean you necessarily have to force a pick here. I do think that there's veteran options that are at least better than what they've gotten out of the quarterbacks the past couple of years, especially. But if you're Joe Shayne and you're Brian Dable, like, can you afford not to take a quarterback and hope it works? Because you already are on thin ice, clearly. I mean, they're here, but it kind of sounds like Mara didn't want them to be here, but just did it because he didn't want to fire them. Like, that's kind of the vibe I got from that, like, end of season press conference. So it's almost like, do they have a choice but to take a big swing at quarterback, whether it's in free agency or the draft? Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like they might be forcing their hand, which you never want to be in that position as a GM, but that might be where it's at for Shayne. So, but before we jump into the mock, Jake, any thoughts you want to have, just kind of talking about that pick in particular, since that's where we'll start?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you guys summed it up pretty well. I think, obviously, this is the same with every draft, but in the top 5 with teams, like the Raiders, Giants, Titans, those are all teams where they could go a number of different ways, and you can look at that and say, that's a solid pick. So I do agree with you, though. I think it would seem that it's more likely to be quarterback to me just because of the fact that there might be jobs on the line. But yeah, I think they could go a number of different ways to improve the roster. Kind of in the same boat as I feel with the Raiders,
Yeah, that's kind of the issue. There's teams at the top that need quarterbacks, only so many of them to go around, right?
Yeah.
But let me pull up the mock here just so we can get that started here in a second. But generally speaking, I think the first 2 picks matter so much, obviously, for the Giants, because if it does go quarterback, I do not think that there's any other quarterback you can justify taking it through. Milroe has a ton of talent. He is not a first-round pick at quarterback right now. He's a guy that you take and you hope becomes a starter for you. He's not one you take and then ask to be the starter. That's just kind of where I'm at with him. I think most evaluators are kind of on the same page there. So at that point, like, you have to just go for the best player available in that case. So that kind of, and honestly, you could argue that neither of these teams could take quarterbacks. Like, if the Titans decide, they've made the comment you brought up, Felix, pre-show, that they talked about, like, they want the best player, the generational player. They're not going to pass on that guy just for a quarterback. Unless they think that Cam Ward or Shooter Sanders is generational, maybe that means they're not going to take one, right? And then the Browns, you mentioned this too, like, if they don't want to put a rookie quarterback into the situation yet, they might just take the best player available to them. And then you have your pick of quarterbacks. It could really go any number of directions. So I'm curious to see how this particular PFF mock draft goes. So let's get it started here. So, okay. Cam Ward, number 1. That's kind of the consensus that a lot of people kind of feel like it is right now, barring the Titans showing no interest in that. Travis Hunter to the Browns. They need help at receiver, and corner room is very good, but it is a little bit older. Ward is not that young anymore. The other guys in that room are going to either need to get paid or kind of underperform last year, so that definitely helps them in either direction. And then now we have the Giants here, right?
Yeah.
So we have Abdul Carter sitting there, right? We have Mason Graham. We have guys like that. Will Johnson, honestly, because I know that Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft had him falling a little bit because apparently some teams are a little bit worried about his tackling and whether he's really that fast, truly. Haven't gotten to corner tape yet, so I haven't got my eyes on Will Johnson a lot, so I can't say where I land on that. But this ultimately isn't what we would do mock, right? Like, this is what we as a group want to do here. So I'm going to obviously start with Felix here. What are you kind of thinking with one quarterback off the board? Do you just kind of go for Sanders? Are you a good enough fan of him to risk that, or do you think it's not worth that pick there?
This is the situation that I like. If I was the general manager and it wasn't Joe Shayne, which sometimes I wish because he gets a lot of money to mess it up. I waver, and part of it is right now. I did a lot of like preliminary sort of film review on prospects, and I watched a bit of Shadur Sanders, and I watched some of the games live, like when they were broadcasted and everything. But I have like a pretty solid higher second round grade on him right now.
Yeah.
And so I think number 3 definitively a reach. But the part of why I waver is I really would love to get a guy like Abdul Carter, right? Yeah. But as you said, jobs are on the line, and it's sort of like maybe this is the pick that has to happen, and you sort of look at the cons, I guess, on the scouting report and just hope that he overcomes a lot of those things. And I do feel like some of it is coachable. Like the biggest thing for me, he holds onto the ball for a long time, even when he does have some kind of protection. And I think that's something that really hurt Daniel Jones in the system under Brian Daboll. But I will say, as much as people would say Daniel Jones was athletic and he could move around, he wasn't agile in short spaces. He was stiff. He was a straight line runner. And Shadur is not the greatest athlete and can't create like Cam Ward, who I have as a head and shoulders QB1 over him. But I do like the fact that Shadur is just a gamer. That's the thing I wrote at the bottom of my scouting report. My conclusion is he is a gamer. And it's no matter how many times he gets hit, if he throws an errant pass, it gets picked off, he's still firing downfield. He's still trying to make plays happen. And I think that's something that's pretty innate to a quarterback. I don't know if that's something you can necessarily coach up, and that's something that's something that Daniel Jones, unfortunately, fell into as his career progressed. The moment he felt pressure, the moment he made a mistake, you notice the ball going to the sticks, going to the flat, and he starts getting very gun shy. And that's something that Shadur doesn't do. And I think is really meaningful because they could be down like 20 points and it's the second quarter and he's not going to get defeated. He's going to sit there and go, all right, let's try and eat into this and take a shot. I do love that he's so clean and precise with mechanics. I think he has really solid accuracy. He can throw off platform even though he didn't necessarily have to show it the way like Cam Ward did. And I think he's got a good enough arm. I really do. And my comp for him is Geno Smith. I see Geno when I watch him. Is not the greatest athlete, not the greatest arm, but he's this very steady presence. And I think if your quarterback is not the best player on your team, then it sucks, but you can overcome it and surround him with a really good supporting cast that's going to help that roster take a step. And really, you need just solid, stable play at that position. So I think I would go Shadur here just because I don't know. I think the fact that he's a gamer and he can rough it if he needs to, that's going to be really necessary in this division in particular. So
That's true.
Yeah, I would go Shadur.
Yeah. All right. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I would agree. One thing I really agree with that you brought up, Felix, is the fact that he's not going to be gun shy. Back when the Raiders had a chance at the number 1 pick before they fucked that up, I was one of the biggest things I was excited about potentially getting Shador was because of the fact that he is mentally confident enough to make a mistake and not kind of melt down from there. I think, especially playing in a market like New York, we've seen a lot of young quarterbacks fail in New York. I think he has the mental toughness for that, and I think at this spot the Giants are in a position where it just feels like to me it kind of, especially if it goes like this, and there will likely be either Ward or Sanders available, so it feels to me like they kind of have to pull the trigger there.
Yeah, my thing ultimately, I don't disagree with that at all, and I do have a similar grade on him, Felix. I do have a early second round, late first round grade, and I think for me, because you comped him to Geno, and I think that's a high comp for him in terms of what he could be at the NFL level, current Geno Smith. The thing I will say with Geno is I do think his arm is underrated in terms of his ability to stretch the field and to kind of put a lot more zip on it than I think Sanders is necessarily capable of, but they still play a similar brand of football. My comp for him, and the one that I think is the most realistic comp, is Teddy Bridgewater. Best version of Teddy is what I kind of think of him. And I think there's similar prospects in the sense that both obviously – are a little bit wiry. They're not necessarily built super strong, but they're tough as hell. They're going to stand in there and deliver the football. They don't have plus arms. They have good enough NFL arms, but they're not going to threaten every single part of the field like a Josh Allen would, or even similar to what a Cam Ward can do in some situations. So he's a quality quarterback prospect, and I think for the Giants, like you said, this isn't what we would do, but it's also you have to factor in what else are they really going to do at quarterback? You're going to convince Sam Darnold to come here and maybe be okay outside of the Vikings. Maybe he's a better player now than he was, but he's going to be good enough. You know what I mean? Even with Neighbors. Yeah, Daboll's been good with that type of quarterback in the past, but it's 1 year. He has to figure it out on the fly. Can you survive there? Can you get a veteran in here that's better than what you've had? Maybe. Is Geno available? That's a guy. I mean, he's been here before, right? For a little bit. Could you get him in a trade if the Seahawks wanted to move on from him? Outside of that, you're not finding an upgrade big enough to probably save your job if you're these two. So to me, you take a quarterback that, yes, is very much imperfect, but if you can get the offensive line to a good spot, health-wise especially, Thomas has to be back. That dude's got to play a full season if this kid's going to survive.
Yeah.
But if you can maybe add to and we'll see if we can do that later, maybe add to the group that you have of the offensive line in the draft, if you can add some more complementary receivers, this could easily work out. It's very possible. So I think that is probably ultimately where we go here. So let me throw him at 3 for the Giants. Moving forward, we got the Cowboys on the clock at pick 12, and I don't think we have to spend too much time on this, but I did tell Felix that I do have, unfortunately, for each pick. Yeah, I don't have the other two NFC East teams, but
oh no,
I do have Cowboys
cursed.
hat. Yeah, it is cursed for me to wear this. I apologize, but got to use my NFL hats when I have the opportunity to. But this one's, we could definitely talk about it a little bit, but I think this one's pretty cut and dry. I think if the player that's currently at the top of this board is on the clock, I do not think they go anywhere else. Cowboys are in a weird spot where they hire a coach that pretty much everyone's like, really? Is this what we're doing?
Yeah.
Which, Cowboys have certainly done that in the past, but this one especially, it's this is who you got to replace Mike McCarthy. Not that Mike McCarthy should have kept his job, but this is what you guys are doing. All right.
Yeah.
I know the last name, I guess. At least there's that.
Jerry Jones he's reminding me of Al Davis in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like it's getting to that point.
Yeah, it's not pretty, but Cowboys have definitely more needs than running back, but
yeah.
This is what this dude does. They go get the star, the biggest player. And to their credit, they have avoided that in the past at the right moments. They have taken Zach Martin over Johnny freaking Manziel back in the day. They've done the right things in the draft for a while now, for the most part. They just haven't been able to quite figure it all out. right? Like they haven't been able to put everything around their key pieces that they need to in order to be able to kind of get over that hump. So I think the running game is obviously the biggest problem for this team. Like it was just horrendous. Prescott clearly needs that as part of his ability to win games for them. We've seen that throughout his career. The weaponry needs upgraded, but I think you can do that a little bit easier in either the later rounds of this draft or potentially in free agency. I feel like you kind of have to go Genti here, but I'm willing to listen to other things here if you guys have any other thoughts there.
It's hard to argue with the Jerry Jones factor because he has such a vice grip on this team. I will say I am impressed by Dallas in terms of how they've drafted over the years because they've really littered their roster with a lot of homegrown talent and then quickly replaced it. I think Jake Ferguson is their starting tight end. He's played nice, and they had Dalton Schultz before him, and I forgot who was before that, maybe Witten. But
I think it was Witten, Schultz. I think that was the order of operations.
Schultz and Ferguson were on the same roster, and Schultz was on the same roster with Witten. It's like they understand how to continue a bit of a pipeline at certain positions. But yeah, I think when you're looking at a Heisman candidate running back, a special player like Ashton Jeanty, and then they clearly need a running back. I mean, they let what's his name walk to the Jags or Titans. I'm forgetting his name. He was running back 2 years ago.
Tony Pollard. Yeah, Pollard. Yeah.
Pollard. They let Pollard walk, and now Rico Dowdle is their starter this year. He's technically a free agent. So it's, maybe they bring him back on a cheap deal, but you need a difference maker. You got CeeDee Lamb at receiver. You got Dak at quarterback. You have a pretty solid offensive line still. I feel like I wouldn't go Jeanty, but I understand the logic if running the ball is that important to their offense and Dak's success.
I think, and I want to get your thoughts here too, Jake, but I think the biggest thing for me is I would go Jeanty mostly because I think the Cowboys aren't a one offensive lineman or one defensive piece away from getting back to the type of football they need to play to win. But I think Jeanty on offense, if you add him to this group that still can run, they run block better than they pass block at this point with the group they currently have. And I think you can add to that group later in the draft where I think the value for offensive line is a little bit better down the board than it is in the first round, especially. I haven't gone through all my evaluations for line because that's next week. But in general, I think the top of this class is not that it's not worth taking in the first round, but I think a player like Jeanty doesn't come around that often at running back. I know some people kind of liken him more to not the elite like Bijan Robinson type prospects, but a step below that. I get that, but I think he's still closer to that level than not. And I think at pick 12, we've seen what happens when you take running backs that are special high recently. It works. And you just look at the Lions. You look at what Bijan Robinson did for the Falcons. They didn't make the playoffs, but a lot of that has to do with paying the corpse of Kirk Cousins $1 bajillion for no reason. So whatever. But I do think that's their best path to getting back to relevancy on offense, especially, and then hopefully the defense can kind of come back around here a little bit with a healthier season. So, but what do you think, Jake?
I feel a bit conflicted here. Part of me wants to. Just because this running back class is so deep,
that's the other argument you can make.
I don't think it would be a terrible idea to now. Rico Dowdle is a free agent, but he ran for over 1,000 yards last year on 4.5 per carry. So I think it could be a good idea to try to bring him back and then also take a back in the third or fourth round maybe and pair those two together. But I'm 51%. My brain wants to do that, and 49 wants to take Jeanty.
So let me ask you then, who would be, for both of you, if you don't take Jeanty, because I could very easily be swayed differently, where do you think you go here, position-wise, player-wise, and you're looking at the board here, where do you think you go if you're the Cowboys?
I like that Will Johnson is still available. I don't know if that's the biggest need for them at the moment, but that was just one player. I don't know if I would...
yeah, that's a tough one. I feel like they They have a few needs. I want to be fair to them because they did have like a lot of injuries, and then Dak missed time, so maybe they're not as bad as that 7-10 record, you know. And
Yeah, I still think probably not
so,
quite that bad realistically,
yeah,
but
so I feel like getting the right players is almost even more. I mean, it's important in the draft period, but it's like it's even more important to find the pieces that you know are going to contribute right away if you think you're in that window.
yeah.
So that adds itself to the Gen-C point, but um, I know offensive line depth might be something that's important for them because Zach Martin is
I feel like he's going
maybe
to retire.
retiring.
I haven't heard any reports yet, but I feel like he's retiring. I think Terrence Steele's been a disaster at right tackle. They could look to move off of
Yeah.
him. That would
Um,
allow you to move Guyton over to right tackle where he played in college as well. If they move someone left,
yeah,
draft
his
left
natural
tackle.
spot.
Yeah, like I'm
Yeah.
looking at the board. Like I would consider again. We haven't gotten through a tackle board yet, Jake. I don't know how many guys you've watched for next week yet, but I'd probably be taking a swing on like a Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. I think he has the best upside at tackle right now of the guys I've watched. And he got hurt last year, obviously, so he'll be banged up. But I think he has a ton of potential. He could be a true left tackle, I think. You could do a Cullen Banks Jr., more of a higher floor player. Could kind of give you flexibility to move guys around because I think he could play inside. Yeah, if you're not going Genti, I'd probably try to take the best lineman available for them.
Yeah, I was gonna say if I wasn't going Gen-C, I'd probably lean Banks.
Yeah,
I like Banks.
Because of
Texas
that
guy too.
versatility.
That's cool.
Texas
Jared,
guy, so yeah,
Texas. The only thing better than the only thing ahead of them would maybe be an Arkansas player, but whatever. Um, no, but yeah, I mean honestly, you guys definitely could talk. Like if you think Banks is a better pick, just for like the sake of them as a team, I could definitely get behind that. So.
Yeah, that's probably what I would pick.
All right, we'll do a little bit something different then. We'll throw Kelvin Banks here. So let's see, where did Genti go? I'm very curious. So to the
yeah,
Bucks
really.
to have the best running back duo in the league, in my opinion. Holy shit. Good for them. So Johnson goes to the Dolphins. That's a good pick. Starks to the Colts makes a lot of sense. Um, yeah, good. Another couple guys here. Connerly is a guy I'm a fan of. Squirting to the Steelers. Yeah, they're not going to take an edge rusher. They don't like edge rushers except for the 3 they have. No, we're up with the Commanders here now. So looking at the board right off the bat, they need help on defense more than anything on this planet. Getting 55 dropped on your head in the NFC title game is almost bad enough to make them wish the season didn't happen. But the season was so good prior to that I'm sure they're still happy. But that's a tough pill to swallow. I'm not gonna lie. I would be devastated if my team ever got this far anyway, which they won't for a while probably because we're not going to get into that today. But that'll be for the AFC North episode whenever that happens. But I think defense is definitely where I'm looking immediately. Definitely some guys I'm already seeing. Like haven't gotten to the defensive players yet in terms of full tape watches, but Jack Sawyer had a great playoff run. He is kind of that high floor edge rusher. Can make some sense. If they want to go offense, I do think like as much as Brian Robinson, I do think is a good running back. He's definitely more of like that kind of mid-tier running back. Could you look to get some more explosiveness to pair with Daniels to kind of make that rushing attack pretty much unstoppable? You could go with an Amarian Hampton here, someone like that. But I'm kind of looking defense probably in the edge or corner room, which there's one guy staring me right in the face that would be kind of a Swiss Army knife piece out of Texas here, Jahdae Barron. But where do you want to look at here first, Jake?
Hampton is exciting me.
Yeah, I mean, him and Daniels together would be certainly something.
That would be very fun. But again, I think I would probably also lean defense here. Especially after giving up 50 points in the NFC Championship game. But
yeah,
that's the problem.
I would say my my sister's boyfriend, who is a diehard Commanders fan, I watched the game with him.
Nice.
And I was rooting for the Commanders because.
Yeah, fuck the Eagles. Just throw that out there right now.
Fuck the Eagles.
Yeah. I don't care. Yeah, I'm good.
But what was funny was even when the game was close early on, like through the whole game, at least once every 10 minutes or however long. He said it several times. He was like, God, we need a corner so bad. So I
Yep.
feel like I have to go corner here.
Yeah, and
in
there's
honor
some
of
guys
him.
here. There's some guys like
Um,
Barron is definitely the most, I think,
yeah,
kind of fluid, and you can do different things with him. Trey Amos, I know a lot of people are fans of him. Siobhan Ravel is the big athletic corner that could be really kind of a hitter. It's one of those guys where I feel like it's either going to be awesome or it's going to be terrible. Like that's my initial thoughts with him. Like we'll see kind of what I think about him when I get into a full tape study. But I'm probably, if I'm the Commanders, I'm leaning Jahdae Barron of this group just because I'm most confident that he's going to find a role in the league because a lot of people thought going into the season before he played outside corner most of the year that he was just an inside guy. I think he can play both, but with having Mike Sanders still also on the roster as your best corner, who also everyone thought was an inside guy but played well on the outside, those two can kind of do whatever is best for the defense in that moment, right? Like they could, if they have a guy that's a little bit more physical, maybe you throw Barron in there, he's a little bit bigger. Guy that's a little bit more quick and athletic, you throw Sanders still in the slot. Like it gives you a lot of flexibility, I think, with that position. So.
yeah, I would agree. I think Barron is where I would go, particularly because of um, what you just said, like having the flexibility to go inside, outside, and then that gives you more flexibility to play by week and match up.
Yes.
And based on the opposing team. The funny thing is though, with Cliff Kingsbury there, I really wonder how much he'll have a say in maybe going after Hampton in this scenario. Because,
the fun factor's there, but I think this team has made it clear, like I think they've earned the right for me to think that they're going to do the smarter thing in terms of like team building because you can, again, similar to what we do with the Cowboys, you can find a runner in the second round or third round. We probably can if we go Barron here, which I think sounds like we will if Jake's on board. But you could find a runner that's an upgrade athletically to what you have in that group, and like to have some more explosiveness.
Definitely,
yeah. But if you're good with it, Jake, I think we'll go Barron.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, that's a good pick. And Eagles, man, what the hell do they need? Oh, the Bills with Marion Hampton, sure. James Cook and Marion Hampton, good luck. Eagles, I mean, the rich get richer in this situation, right? Whoever they take is just icing on the cake with this roster. Jesus Christ. I think right away, the thing that stares me in the face is corner because you have two guys here that I think are first-round caliber players, and because Darius Slay is only long for how much longer is he going to play? I know you drafted two corners last year. However, realistically, one of them is Cooper DeJean, who I think can play outside, but has shown so much in the slot that, like, realistically, you need another outside corner that's an actual, like, starter caliber player. Now, they drafted Keely Ringo a couple years ago. Maybe that's going to be him. I wasn't the biggest fan of him. I thought he was a little bit too stiff to kind of be an outside player consistently, unless it was like a true, like zone. I mean, they did run a lot of zones, so they could probably get away with it. But if you want to guarantee you have somebody, or at least have a better shot of having somebody that might be able to replace Slay, I think probably corner is where I'd be looking. But what do you guys think here?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the rich get richer. I feel like they could just go whoever, and it would make absolute sense. I do agree with you on corner, and I think that is the smart thing to do, particularly since Darius Slay is getting a little long in the tooth, and then you already have invested with two younger guys there. So adding another guy just ensures that what is already a good defense and a talented secondary is just going to stay that way, and they're younger, so they're all going to be there for the next at least 3-4 years,
Right.
So, and if one of them falls off, or we've seen Howie Roseman work his magic, maybe you end up trading one of those guys, and it ends up becoming something amazing yet again, because whatever he does is golden. But
seems like it. Yeah, golden boy.
Yeah.
Real quick, I wanted to throw this out there real quick because I see it in our chat. We've been rated by the Dixon Way. I'm not sure who this is, but appreciate it for those watching right now. Hopefully you like draft stuff. I'm not familiar with whoever this is, but I'll always take the viewers. That's fine. Just want to make sure I'm not sure if I've ever
feels like never mind.
Jake, go ahead, say it.
No, it sounded like a joke. I didn't know if it was
Well,
like
exactly.
serious.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Like it's either a joke or I'm about to be an idiot. One of the two. But no, go ahead. Continue, Felix.
No, I was just gonna say I think that makes total sense. The only other thing would be just again, like I referenced with the Giants, you can never have enough pass rushers. So
Yeah,
I
and
wouldn't be
even
surprised if
then,
they added some.
they could look to kind of move on from a couple guys, and they're losing. Obviously, already lost Brandon Graham for the year and for his career. He'll be retiring. Other guys kind of in that boat too. I will say the other thing I wanted to mention before I let Jake go here is you could look at the interior of the offensive line because Mekhi Becton has played well there this year, but he was, I believe, on just a 1-year contract, so they'd have to re-sign him. And because he played well, I could see a team sniping him and trying to give him a decent contract to come play for them. So you could look at an interior player, but what are you thinking, Jake?
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, it's either edge or corner. I would say. I think you could go with a player like Sawyer here. I'd be happy. Amos, I'd be happy. Ravel, I'd be happy.
I think Ezraku's probably their type if we're taking an edge rusher. More of that like smaller but explosive athlete type. You could also look at a guy like Princely, Umam Yellen. His measurables came out crazy at the Senior Bowl. I think he's like 6'4", 260,
gosh,
34-inch arms. Like, and if he played at 260, you wouldn't have known that. Holy shit!
No,
I haven't watched enough of him yet to like do any sort of gradings because that's later on in the cycle. But I've seen his reps, and I'm like, that dude don't look like he's 260 running on the edge. All I'm gonna say there. So maybe he bulked up a little bit. Maybe he wanted to look a little bigger, but probably couldn't have been that much lighter than 260. I mean, he didn't add 20 pounds in the past 2 weeks or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So,
he
he's certainly
solid.
Oh yeah, he does. So that's certainly an option. Yeah. So I'm kind of I'm in between. If we go corner, I'd probably go Ravel. They just had success with a small school corner with elite physical traits. I think that's kind of their type moving forward. Or one of the edge rushers, kind of wherever you guys think is best.
Yeah, I lean Ravel because of what you said, but then also the fact that I think he's coming off an injury this past week.
So they won't need him necessarily next year, probably as bad as they will the year after and then beyond. So he might not have to be an immediate starter or anything like that. So
yeah, so you'd be investing and banking on like that upside of what he's going to be, and he's not necessarily going to have to contribute like year one, or if he gets healthy, he's going to play, but they have that luxury of not having to bank on the health, So I think it would make sense for them to gamble for the high end upside.
Yeah. What do you think, Jake? Kind of feel that same way?
I like Ravel.
I do think Ravel, like the fact that he got hurt may knock him out of the first round, but I think what I saw of him last year, especially because I thought I believe he could have come out last year. What I saw was like at least on a potential base was good enough to go probably late in the first. So we'll get him off the board here. And then Giants coming up here again. So we took, of course, Shedeur Sanders, got the quarterback in the building here. I immediately think line help, either interior defense or on the offensive line in general. Kind of need help pretty much, I would say, like long-term, maybe everywhere except for left tackle, unfortunately, because, like, I don't know about you, Felix, how you feel about the center. I forget his name off the top of my head right now.
John Michael Schmidt.
Yeah, John Michael Schmidt. I would love to the draft, but hasn't really lived up to the draft stock so far. So it's really kind of upgrade potentially almost anywhere except for left tackle. I know that you have Luminor there still, I think, for a couple of years. There's almost a 3-year deal. He's good enough to play one spot along the line, wherever that may be. So I could see them going there. Or defensive interior, definitely a lot of guys still on the board here. Let me actually throw those guys up. So if you're looking at defensive interior, and then we'll just do line in general because I want to kind of see this group. So Nolan's on the board, really explosive pass rusher type. Could be good next to Lawrence for sure. Wyatt Milam, I'm a big fan of. I do think he's going to end up inside, looking at that arm length and kind of the way he played at West Virginia. I think he's probably going to be a really, really good guard as a pass protector, especially. Those are guys kind of like right away. Cameron Williams, if you're banking on upside, could be a franchise right tackle one day, but probably not right away. At least probably not. Where do you kind of lean in here first, Felix?
It's funny. because I feel like after quarterback, they really have to focus on offensive line, like depth in
Mm-hmm.
particular, because I think outside of right guard, they have pretty much their starting lineup when everyone's healthy. And when they play together, when they did, because they all got hurt at some point, um, they had a solid group, and you could see it those first 4 or 5 weeks as they gelled together. It was promising, and I think really for them is the depth because when guys go down, you need the next guy to come up, and there was like a drastic step back. Um, I'm tempted offensive line, but I really feel like defensively they need to also add depth. I think they need difference makers that are not just the names that we know. Dexter Lawrence is a monster of an interior player on defense, but outside of him, they have nothing. I mean, they have a very promising undrafted free agent in Elijah Chapman, but
Mm-hmm.
he
Yeah.
he flashed more as a pass rusher than as a run stopper. So you want balance. So I lean toward Walter Nolan because of the fact that he's so athletic for the position. Um, and I think I've seen like some people mention that they have like a first round grade on them because they just think that there's upside there.
Yeah, the
Um,
athletic traits especially, you don't see that often and he's a lighter player a little bit. I think he came in at 293 at the Senior Bowl. But I mean, nowadays if you're 290 plus, you're a defensive tackle. Might as well say like, yeah,
might
it's
as
just
well, yeah.
especially if you have the athletic traits to get away with it. Because I think especially next to Lawrence, because despite the fact that Lawrence is constantly near the top of the league in pressures last couple of years, he does play legitimate nose tackle a lot of the time. So you don't need a guy
Yeah,
that is an actual nose tackle. You need a guy that can penetrate, can kind of create plays in the backfield. That screams
exactly.
Nolan for me. So
Yeah, and like I said, I would have been fine with if there were no quarterbacks available. I would have been fine with Mason Graham at third.
yeah,
Um, so I lean Nolan here. The only other position I would really consider is if there's a talented receiver or a pass rusher. Um,
mm-hmm.
Actually, honestly though, I would take receiver. I would say pass rusher or corner because
Gotcha.
they have Deontay Banks who was getting just roasted all
Yeah, it's
year,
unfortunate. I
and
was a fan of Banks, man, but he don't
yeah,
got it. He don't got it.
and he's not. I think for him, it's the physical talent's there. I think it's
It's
all defense
mental. It's
because
100% mental with him. It is
yeah,
100% like he just
um,
doesn't get it so far. Just doesn't.
and that's the thing is like he's the most talented corner on the team right now, outside of Drew Phillips, who was really great in the slot.
Their best corner
Um,
pretty easily last year.
yeah, so there's someone who needs to be on the outside to complement Banks, and then they don't really have depth behind them. Um, so yeah, I would say corner or defensive line. So Walter Nolan
Amos is on the
and
board. His teammate is also on the board, so it's one of those two I could
yeah,
see easily being the pick. Um,
I would say one of
yeah.
those two to be
Where would
honest,
you
because
lean on this
yeah,
one, Jake? Just because I'm curious.
Probably cornerback,
Okay.
I think, but
It is
I
it
can
is
definitely
technically the bigger need.
Nolan as
Like if we're
well.
being honest about it, because like you pretty much
yeah,
have Drew Phillips, the promise potentially of Deontay Banks if he can figure out how to play football, and then I like the safeties there. I like the safety group. I do. Um, so I'm think I'm good there. So I think I would lean Amos then in that case too. I think that's kind of where I'm at because
yeah,
again he's also a guy that's been getting like these both have kind of been getting some first round buzz. So let's throw Amos in the group here. And we got the
yeah.
Cowboys up against. So they did not take Genty. They did take a tackle. So I immediately go to running back and well,
Scatterbo.
Scattaboo. If this was
Yeah,
Jake, if Jake was deciding this pick by himself, I think we know how this would go. Jake is a big Scatabo fan, mostly because I
Not this
think,
early.
yeah, not this, but he's a Sac State fan, so goes back a ways for him, honestly.
He's
I do
my
think,
running
yeah,
back four.
yeah, he's his RB4 in this
oh
class,
nice.
which
Okay.
I mean he's gonna end up higher for me than he was in the running back episode. I'm pretty confident once we get to that point because I'm gonna watch the playoff games and some other stuff I haven't watched from him yet. But he was pretty far down my board just because I worry about the athletic traits not really being good enough to make it in the NFL. But he is very special with what he does do. But I do think running back is where you kind of want to go here. I do want to throw receiver up here on the board as well. Savion Williams is one of the weirdest players in the class. Love him though, but very, very fun player. I immediately go Caleb Johnson staring me in the face. That's the guy that I think fits like kind of what the Cowboys want, ideally. Like they want to run through people and run like, and he's going to run through people. Like Sampson is a good player, but I did have Johnson as a higher graded player for me. But where do you guys kind of think with this receiver, running back, maybe some other position?
Oh, Jake can go first.
I'm
tinkering.
I like Johnson. I like for me if they bring in any like quality running back that can be part of like a 2-man backfield, then I would say you take receiver here and go running back next round. If they don't, then I would say you go running back. For the sake of this, I would say running back. So I like Caleb Johnson, I think.
Gotcha.
I do like Scattaboo. He's obviously pretty high on my board, but I don't think a team is going to take him this high.
Yeah.
So
now, I will say on my personal rankings,
maybe he'll get some hype before the draft, but I just don't think he's going to go this high. So I think Johnson would probably be my choice here.
I will say if we're going off my board now, it's a little bit different because one of these players that I'm going to mention is a player that I think should be a committee back, and so I don't know if I take him ahead of some of the guys who I think can be more full-time starters. But Travion Henderson is the best player on the board at running back for my grading, right? And then his teammate Quinshon Judkins at 4. I do like Caleb Johnson a lot. Like they're not separated by much, but they're much like Johnson's much higher on this board than he is compared to the other guys. Like Quinshon Judkins, I think he's just more of an NFL back to me. Like right away, like I think Johnson has a little bit of bust potential, not because he isn't a great player, but I do wonder if, like especially the long speed element, like it looks good on tape in the Big Ten at times, but there's other times where like this dude just doesn't get going as fast as I want him to. So it's a little bit of an iffy thing. But either way, like one of these running backs I think would be a good fit. But that's a good point, Jake. Like if they commit to finding a running back that can pair with a rookie, you probably don't have to take one with your second round pick. So I'm open to like looking at, if we just look at receiver, for example, with guys who are left, like Savion Williams is kind of too weird to be the pick for me. He was my receiver 10 just because I don't know what to do with him at this point. He could either be like a better Cordero Patterson, or he's going to be like, can't think of his name even, Laviska Shenault. Like he's going to be either Laviska Shenault or he's going to be like Cordero Patterson, but bigger. Like it feels like it's going to be one of those two. But Restrepo's pure slot option. Not that they don't need that, but I think CeeDee Lamb does a lot of his work from the slot. Jaden Higgins would probably be the guy that I would look at here, based on what they need on the outside of CeeDee Lamb. But where you guys kind of land receiver-wise here, you think?
It's funny. You made the point about CD doing a lot of damage from the slot. I'm a big Restrepo fan. And
fun player.
Yeah, he's a fun player, and I like the fact that he has a level of awareness that you really need when things start to break down, and that's something that really stuck out to me. Is Cam Ward makes a lot of these highlight throws.
Yeah, and a lot of times like, I'm open, and then he's like, too bad, and he's like, oh shit, I have to figure something else out, and he's gonna run around and make it happen with him. So
yeah, and there's a lot of moments where it's like you see Restrepo running a route, and the moment he turns his head and sees how it's broken down, he's running in the direction of like Ward and trying to get open, and that awareness I think is big. But because CD plays so much slot, that limits what Restrepo could do outside. I like Jaden Higgins a lot too. I think of these guys here, I think he's the one that they would peg and select here.
I think he could replicate a lot of what Michael Gallup did for them, like that type of player was a downfield threat because of his size, physical player. Like that's kind of what I think they're wanting to replicate ideally. So that's where I land. That's why I landed on his name for sure. But
I agree with Jake in terms of like I just still think that running back is pushed down as a need because the class is so talented. So
there'll be one there in the third round for sure.
And the only thing I could see is like they didn't go Genty in the first round, and Jerry Jones loves Scattaboo, so they're gonna go get Scattaboo.
that could, but that's totally within the realm of possibility. So
so I lean Higgins here. I think that's who I would pick.
What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I think just in general, I like Williams, Restrepo, and Higgins pretty equally, but I do think Higgins is the best fit for their offense right now.
Yeah, because he's to me like the best profile, certainly between those three, as an outside receiver to pair with Lamb, so he can stay inside a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So let's throw Higgins here to the Cowboys. Commanders up at 61. So we took for them Jahdae Barron corner. So I still kind of leaning, defense here. Like you could look at edge. You could look at safety. I think they're good at. Linebacker, they're older. So you could look at linebacker. This is kind of where you start seeing linebackers become potential picks, I think, more so than anywhere else in the draft. But we could look at, we talked about running back, like Trayvon Henderson would be fun. That might be hard for me to not want to do. Because, like, you think of what Eckler was supposed to be, but he's old and not good anymore. Pair with Brian Robinson Jr. as a hammer, that could be fun. Because he would help on third downs a ton, not just as a receiver, but that might be the best pass blocking back in the class, Henderson. So, you guys are probably going to have a hard time getting me off of this one.
I'm not going to lie. The last point you just made is part of what I was thinking. Henderson, because he is a very good pass blocker in this class, and I think that's incredible. And he's a talented back. He's a talented third down kid.
Wouldn't have to be the lead guy here. Robinson could take a lot of the early down carries for now. Because again, this guy is like a 10 to 15 touch guy. Watch out. Like that. This is like, I think Diet Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be my like favorite thing to say about him. Is like, do you like what Jahmyr Gibbs does? You can get some like 85% of that from Trayvon Henderson probably. But what do you think, Jake? Kind of feel similarly, or?
Yeah. I Henderson would be fun in that offense.
It'd be fun because you go corner in the first round, and they're like, okay, let's get the fun. You know what I mean?
All right, we were responsible.
Yeah, we ate our vegetables. We took the slot corner. That's also can play outside. Like now we can throw screens for 50 yards. Yeah, we can throw 50-yard screens. Hey, just look at the Texas game and tell me you don't want Trayvon Henderson on your team. That's all I'm going to say. So somehow scored with no time on a screen and like blew past everybody. It's so funny. But no, unless you guys actually like, again, I can be told differently, but I do love that fit. So
yeah. No, I think Henderson there makes sense.
All right, cool. Let's go. Eagles. So again, we took Devon Ravel. Receiver is like they have as a need, but like, do you need more than two receivers when you're quarterbacked by Jalen Hurts and running the ball with Saquon Barkley? I don't know. Somehow Jahan Dawson was worth a third-round pick to them. Still don't know what the thought process was there. Nothing against him, but I just don't know if there was a point to that. I'm probably looking right away interior offensive line or just in offensive line in general, because this team, they always have guys waiting in the wings. Like Lane Johnson is a potential guy that you could lose at any moment, and bring him up. That's actually, I would look at Cam Williams, because this is a team. If any team is going to make Cam Williams into the promise that he potentially has, it's this team, right? Like this feels. I don't think he'll be here. I think his talent will get him drafted higher than this. But I think if a team is going to make him a right tackle that sticks around for a decade, it's probably the Eagles.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to say it after or before every pick, but fuck Philly.
Yeah, fuck the Eagles, of course. But
I really hate that they have so many riches on that roster.
Stupid.
Yeah. I think that makes total sense. And I was going to say offensive line. I think, the adage is you build through the trenches, and I think you also stay relevant by building through the trenches a little bit as you continue on, because you need to have depth. You need to have guys who are going to replace the dudes who leave your team or get older. And I think Williams is going to, like you said, that's a great place for him to land, to learn, to grow, and not necessarily have to start right away either. So
no, because Johnson, I think, will at least be back probably next year. Maybe if they win the Super Bowl, maybe he calls it quits. But you don't have to play him as a rookie. You could find another player to kind of fill in for the time being. But I think he'd be a good fit.
I I think Williams is talented enough too that if it came to it, if they ran into like what they ran into in the NFC Championship game where they got banged up in the interior, and I mean they figured it out because they killed the
Of course they
Twins,
do.
but
Yeah.
like. And you could play around with kicking them inside if you needed.
Yeah, he's got the
contribute,
size
and
to
you
do it.
needed a
He's one of
body.
those guys that has
Yeah.
the because I hate when they try to like some guys I'm like, all right, I understand, like maybe you don't think he's good enough to tackle, but he's not a guard either. Like some guys are just not interior players. He has the size to be an interior player. Like,
Yeah.
the mass.
So that's why
I
I
should
think
say.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense to pick him. Yeah.
Yeah, I
What do you
can
think, Jay?
definitely get behind that.
Yeah, that one just stared me in the face. I was like, I gotta like kind of talk
Yeah,
about
that
that
makes
because it
sense.
just makes too much sense for a team like them. So I know Felix got to get going here in a second, so I want to make sure we get this Giants pick in here before you run out.
Yes.
So again, we've taken corner, quarterback, two really important positions for this team. Now the offensive line is still obviously kind of a big thing. Again, I think if you want to go with offensive line, I feel like the interior is probably. I mean, maybe right tackle because Luminor can play right tackle, but probably a better guard in my opinion. Like if you're going to start him on the line, there's some tackles still on the board. Marcus and Bo. A lot of people are fans of him. I think that he could play anywhere on the offensive line pretty much. Like he's one of those guys that I think could go all the way down the center. Like just with his athleticism, his size, because he's only about 300 pounds roughly, I think, is what he weighed in at. Arm length was fine, but not so good that you have to keep him a tackle. Like he could kind of be a Swiss Army knife piece. If you want to go pure tackle, Ariante Ursry's on the board still, which I know some people have kind of soured on him. I'm curious if I do as well when I watch him because he was one of the guys that I was higher on going into last year.
Yeah.
And then Boston College's Ozzie Trapillo also has a lot of fans as well. Big 6'7" tackle, kind of that more Mauler type, honestly. So you feel kind of interior or offensive tackle, or do you want to go a different position entirely? Sorry.
It's funny because here I was thinking, offensive line or maybe receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I just Darius Slayton's probably gonna be gone.
I assume,
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt sucks.
Jalen Hyatt is a certified slot merchant, certified slot easy release in college merchant.
Thank you.
Unfortunately,
yes.
But true.
Yeah, and Wandale Robinson is particularly a slot guy that I think could be a gadget player they don't use well.
One of the funny, like, I don't know how many targets he had this year, but if he had 100 targets, had to be the least efficient 100 targets in the history of the sport.
Like, I think he's the first player in history with like 100+ targets, and he averaged like 7.9 yards,
something like that,
or something.
It was the weirdest player I've ever like. Good for him, I guess. But like, what are we? What do we do? Whatever, it's fine. So there's some guys on the board here that I'm interested. Like Jalen Royals is a fun player. I kind of comped him a little bit when we did our receiver rankings to like Robert Woods a little bit to me, like a bigger bodied but not super tall receiver that blocks well, is not a speedster but runs after the catch really well, that type of guy. Isaiah Bond if you just want to go for speed but not Jalen Hyatt, that's an option. But
honestly, and then Trey Harris is there too, and Tez Johnson, and
that's a good dart throw to have because that dude's either awesome or he can't play, but you don't know because he plays for Ole Miss. Good luck figuring that one out. I have no clue.
That's the thing.
No idea what to tell you there.
Yeah, I'm very tempted to go with I'm tempted to go with Trapillo. I think the profile makes sense. I think you can kick the Luminor inside.
Mm-hmm.
I also think he just presents a way better option at tackle right now that isn't a Luminor or Thomas, because the guys they have behind them are trash.
Evan Neal, you say? Did you give him away, you think, right now? Like, do you think some team would give you like a 2038 7th for him if you asked for it? You think they would take it?
The thing about Evan Neal that I'm praying, they have still not tried him at guard, and I'm just hoping
they have to, right? You have to try something. Because he can't play tackle. He cannot do it.
He just can't. And it's fascinating. I don't think I've seen a player with so much potential,
just not
and then
know how to play
also
football,
have coaching.
Yeah, it's just
and
he can't
just
play,
repeat the same mistakes that he makes all the time. But yeah, I lean Trapilo, namely because of Illuminor being able to kick inside. Maybe they try Evan Neal at guard. So your interior, I don't think, is as big of a problem or need as those tackle spots. And then Thomas,
God forbid he
Thomas
goes down, right? Yeah,
he gets hurt, and then everything. Yeah, once he goes down, the offensive line completely changes. So
starting
I would
Josh
go
Azudu, or whoever the hell it was. What was it? Is that who it was for a minute?
God,
Felix, like, don't say his name.
Hearing the names gives me PTSD. Like, I would lean. God, if line wasn't a problem, if offensive line wasn't a problem, I would say Jalen Royals.
Yeah,
but line is such a need, so I go Ozzy Trapilo. That's who I.
What do you think, Jake? Real quick.
Well, I would really like really like to take Jalen Royals, but I think the fact that we're taking Shadur Sanders in the first round kind of makes it like we kind of got to take a tackle here. And with that in mind, I do like Trapilo.
Yeah, I'm curious where I land on him, but I know he has a lot of fans. He's a big athletic tackle, so we'll take him here. And then if you do got to go Felix, obviously, by all means, get out here.
I think I'll hold off for these next.
All right, cool. All right, we only got a couple picks here left anyway, so. All right, so we got the Cowboys up on the board at 76. Again, to remind everybody, we have Kelvin Banks Jr., Jaden Higgins. I'm a fan of it so far. Maybe you aren't, Felix, considering you don't want them to be good. But for this exercise, we have to try. We have to do our best.
Bastards.
No, but so now I think is where we can look at running back a little bit. Quinshon Judkins would national championship winner, same school as Ezekiel Elliott, feels good to me. I'm partial to Devin Neal, but Judkins is definitely higher on my board, of course. That's kind of the guy that I go to right off the top of my head. Is just a really solid back. I think he does pretty much everything at a starter level at the NFL. Showed out in the title game with that big run. Like, I think he offers big playability, but more so just consistency at the running back position that they don't really have right now. So that's my immediate thought. But any other positions you guys want to look at?
I think we hold off on running back long enough for Jerry Jones. And
but Isaiah Bond. No. Jake knows this. I have Isaiah Bond like 16th at receiver, mostly because I want him to go back to school. I don't think he's ready to be an NFL player. So, like, I wouldn't actually probably, like, if you made me pick all the receivers in this class, he'd probably get taken earlier just potential-wise. But I'm like, go back to school, young man. What are you doing here? You're not ready to go. You're not ready for it. But no. But God.
I like Devin Neal a lot.
I do too. Yeah.
But I do feel like Judkins is going to fit more off of the recency bias. I think this might be where Jerry Jones finally gets that influence, and he's going to be like, I saw that boy run in the title game. Like, he's great. And and everyone in the room is like, you know what? He's close enough to Devin Neal. Like, let's just do it. I think Judkins makes sense.
What do you think, Jake?
I'm happy with Judkins. I'm honestly happy with a few running backs in this area. It kind of depends on if they address it in free agency and what type of back they bring in if they do. But I think I can picture Jerry Jones just watching the title game and seeing Judkins and being like, I want him on my team.
Get me that boy. Jerry, don't say it like that. Don't
say it like that.
Please, let's not. Okay.
That's exactly how you would say
it. Yeah. Bring me that boy. Anyway. I think we can get Judkins here. Washington up at pick 79, which is actually Miami's third round pick. We got Jahdae Barron, Travion Henderson. Love that for them so far. I do think, like, sneakily, wide receiver is a bit of a need because you have Terry McLaurin, but Dimey Brown, as much as I love him, he fucks up too much. I'm sorry. Dude be fucking up all the time. Like, he'll make the greatest play I've ever seen, then you're like, why didn't you catch the ball? Or why did you fumble the ball, dude? What's wrong with you? It's like a weird mix of things. They took McCaffrey with, I think, like pick 100 exactly. He really hasn't done anything yet, but he is also a mid-round pick. This would also be a mid-round pick. Zacchaeus made some plays for them, but like they don't really have that like true number 2 guy with Terry, right? And I don't know if any of these guys that are left could be that, looking at the board. Again, if you want to take a chance on Trey Harris, by all means. I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea when I would draft him. He's receiver 12 for me solely because I don't know what to do with him. Like you look at that offense. Watching that offense is insane. It's like, how am I supposed to know if any of you are good? Like legitimately, like I have no idea. Like Jackson Dart is like number 11 for me at quarterbacks. Not because I don't think he's better than that theoretically, but I have no idea whether he can play NFL football. I have no clue. Like he's taken like 30 snaps under center, I think it was, or something like that. I forgot where I heard that. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, I can't do it with him. But anyway, side point. If they don't go like position like that type of position, they could look for some depth on the offensive line as well. Like we talked about, some guys that are probably still on the board here. Charles Grant has a lot of fans out of William and Mary. I'm gonna try to find tape on him. I don't know if I'll find it. We'll have to see. I definitely want to watch him. Donovan Jackson's probably the name that sticks out the most here because he could potentially be a left tackle or a left guard or just an interior player because he played so well for Ohio State tackle. I'm going to evaluate him as both when I get to him for sure, just to kind of see where I think he should play. But in a weaker tackle class, like true tackle class, he could end up kind of getting pushed up the board, I think, a little bit. But where do you guys look at here?
Funny, I was thinking offensive tackle, but I do think it is important for them to invest at receiver because outside, like you said, outside of Scary Terry, like everybody else they got in the receiver room is not a consistent down-to-down type of threat that I think the defense needs to really like worry about or concern themselves with.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me wonders if Cliff Kingsbury, looks at like Isaiah Bond and the traits and banks on the traits, especially in the scheme, or if he thinks the same thing about Trey Harris. Part of me wonders about a guy like Nick Nash, who's a bigger receiving option.
I will say, Felix, just off the top of my head, like something I want to mention Nick Nash. We did our receiver rankings recently. I had Nick Nash 21st out of 21 receivers. Mostly, I will say, no disrespect to the Triple Crown winner of college football. I think he's basically Allen Lazard, but smaller. And that makes me have hives. I don't love that thought process. Yeah. So that's my only thing. Now, he could be better than him, obviously. But I'm just saying, like, that was my thought process. I think, Jake, you felt similarly. It's just kind of a weird player in college.
He was right around, like, 15-ish for me. But
yeah, so.
I'm a bit higher on him, though.
Yeah, you're actually higher on him. But go ahead.
I'm higher just because I don't want to talk about him for too long, but just because he's new to the position.
True, former quarterback, so there's that.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. I will say there's like just a little hope for me that he like pans out because he did go to where I got my master's degree.
Oh,
like the one school I'm associated with that has a football. But I like the idea of having a bigger body guy on the outside to complement McLaurin, but I do think because he's new to the position, that means there's a lot of potential, but it also means from the line of scrimmage, his release package, all of that is going to be something you have to refine. And that makes me almost thinking that way makes me lean toward Bond, just because if Bond can get free a little bit, the speed is there. And maybe they bank on that. And I think that was half the problem with what they were dealing with when you watch them play. Jaden Daniels is dropping back, and it's like McLaurin might be open, but if he's doubled, he's looking, and everyone's kind of covered because they're not getting free or getting separation. And maybe having Bond allows the offense to have someone to stretch the field, and then Terry does more of the dirty work rather than being everything for that offense.
Yeah.
And that's not to say Bond can't grow into something better than what he's profiling at. So.
His profile is just tough for me, just because and I talked about this on the receiver ranking show, so I won't spend too much time on it. But unbelievable speed, but I just think that he doesn't have almost any nuance at the position yet. And that will come a little bit. He also played DB in high school. I know he played more DB than receiver coming into college, so he is still newer to the position for a different reason than a guy like Nick Nash. So, if you're banking on potential with him, it makes sense because he should theoretically get more of that nuance. But he's a one-speed player. Like, he's fast, and that's great, but he's only fast. Like, it feels like he doesn't really know how to tempo his routes. He doesn't really know how to settle into zones, like all the little things that make you a great receiver prospect opposed to maybe a worse version of Xavier Worthy. Like that's kind of what I kind of think about him as. Hey, Worthy's done good stuff for the Chiefs, but I think it's because he has a little bit more of that ability to actually run routes and do different things. So, but I think if we're going receiver, I would lean Trey Harris just because he gives you the size and least. If you're taking a chance on any of these guys at this point, I'll take the dude who looks like an insane person. Like he looks like a freak.
Yeah.
Like he just does. Like, and he makes some of the wildest catches in the class, like some of the coolest catches. And I think at least you can bank on some of that stuff. But what do you think, Jake?
Yeah.
Honestly, I probably like Bond more than Harris at this point. Just kind of going back to Felix's point about how, McLaurin might be open, and then aside from that, there's not a lot of getting open. I think in that, like, Harris will catch anything thrown to him, but
feels like
I think he could just be a little better at getting open necessarily. I think Bond provides you that. I don't know. I think both of them can definitely, like, hopefully impact the offense next year. So I could be happy with both of them, but I would probably lean a little bit more Bond, I think.
Well, with you guys both talking about Bond a little bit more, like I will definitely kind of step aside for this one because again, Bond is one of those players for me that just I do have not a bias, I wouldn't call it because it's not I don't have anything against like him or the school or anything like that. I watch him like, dude, you should be a player right now. You should be a college player right now. Like that's kind of my thing. Also, the Browns took Dylan Gabriel. LOL, that's awesome. Last pick here for the Eagles. Last pick for the Eagles. We're gonna run through it real quick because I want to make sure that we can get done with it before Felix has to run. We took Siobhan Revelle. We took a tackle and Cameron Williams. I think that you look at some edge depth here. Maybe you look at linebackers if there's any left on the board because as much as linebackers a spot where like they should be good because they should retain Bond, like they should try to, but he was so good they might not be able to afford him legitimately. Like that's how good he's been. So like if they can't, like I could see linebacker being a thing for them to consider. Like I actually really like. Now I'm curious how high he's going to be on rankings by the time we get through this. But I really like Kobe King. He's a full-size linebacker, can be like that run enforcer type for them. I'm not going to give you what Bond's given you in terms of coverage and stuff like that, but I think he could give you the physicality, stuff like that. So you'll look at edge. Ashton Gelati has his fans. Antoine Powell-Ryland, I know, has a lot of fans as well. Is there another position you guys want to look at besides this, or do you think you want to go on defense somewhere?
I tend to lean with you. I think edge, linebacker. The name that stuck out to me immediately was Antoine Powell-Ryland, namely because I think he profiles similar to the body type. And then I think so far, from what I've seen via the Shrine Bowl, he's been murdering people.
Yeah, that's another reason. Like he's been messing people up.
And I think that's something that's gonna stick with Philly and Howie Roseman is like they tend to draft very smart, and part of it is because I think they don't overthink these picks.
Yeah.
And they look at a guy's tape and they say, yeah, he's pretty good. And then they see him in the circuit, pre-draft, and they're like, wow, yeah, he's pretty good. And then they just pick him when he's there.
Yeah, this guy's good. And it's literally sometimes it's that simple, guys. I don't.
And they're not sitting there going, oh, he's only 6'3" or 6'2.5". Like he's off the board because he doesn't fit our measurables. Like they go and they pick quality football players, and Powell-Ryland, I think, not only fits that, but now he's getting that little bit of hype and attention with the pre-draft circuit that I think that's going to make them say, like, yeah, like, let's go after this kid and his upside.
Yeah, I'm definitely down with it. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I could see that.
I do think he's their type for sure, though.
Yeah,
Like,
I think maybe closer to the draft, he might. I think right now it might be a little bit high for him, but I still would like the selection. Yeah, I think he definitely would.
Virginia Tech, 14 sacks,
Yeah.
25 hurries, like coming off back-to-back double-digit sack seasons. Pass rush grade is up there. Not the best run defender, but let's be honest, the Eagles have like 18 guys that can play run defense, and like
Yeah.
fine. The interior of that off the defensive line is like good luck trying to run in our direction. Like, yeah, if you want to run outside, who cares? Like the corners tackle, everyone else tackles. Like we don't care. Like
And
that's kind of what it feels like.
they're often playing with a lead too, so teams start abandoning the run after a while. So it's like, all right, let's just rush the passer. Like
Yeah, they're like,
crazy.
oh man, thank God Nolan Smith came off the field. It's like, oh, what the hell? They have 3 other guys that are going to come in anyway. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
As a tackle, I'd be like, what the hell? What are we, like all these dudes are the same
Never gonna
person.
break.
There's just 8 copies of every player. It's like, what are we doing? Like, it's stupid. But now, yeah, I think that's kind of where I'd be leaning for sure. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's throw him on the board, and that will do it for the NFC East version of our 3 on mock draft series, guys. In general, I think we did a pretty good job for everybody. I think you'd be pretty happy, Felix, based on what we were talking about. I know the Sanders thing is like, you have to take a quarterback. We'll see what happens. But he, at least I think profiles as more of a higher floor player than, I don't know, some lanky dude who used to play for you. I won't even say his name right now. I don't want to do that to you. But,
Give you nightmares.
Yeah, so I think he gives you a better chance of success there. So, but any final thoughts you guys want to throw out before we get out of here?
No, just that this was fun. I'll definitely be back. And,
yeah, absolutely. We'll love to have you.
I'm really excited to dive further into tape as the pre-draft circuit starts going along. So,
absolutely, yeah, get that Senior Bowl list, kind of go from there. That's what I would probably do. But any other thoughts you have, Jake, before we get out?
Yeah, no, this was a fun one.
No,
I think we did the draft, so of course we think this. But I would be pretty happy if I was any of the teams in this division.
And we made the Cowboys do something that even they probably aren't smart enough to do, despite Again, I love Genty. I think he'd be worth the pick, but I think we probably were smarter about it than maybe they would be. So
yeah,
Jerry, if you're listening, I know you're not.
You should take our advice.
Good luck with Brian Schottenheimer. Also, you were crying at the press conference. Is everything good, bro? Like, are we good? Like, I don't know what that was about. I heard that happened, so I don't know. But on that note, I'll let you guys get out of here. We'll see you guys next time. Next week, we are doing our overall offensive line rankings, talking interior